I direct the 21st Century Defense Initiative at Brookings, a think tank in Washington. And what we wrestle with is how war is changing. Everything from the changing forces acting on war, new technologies in war, new actors in war, changing expectations on the military itself, to how the military is changing in itself, from its training to its budgets to its doctrine. Essentially, what's different about war today from in the past. You're seeing a range of new technologies introduced, whether it's cyber warfare, fighting in a domain that didn't exist a little over a generation ago, a place of zeros and ones, and you have conflict in that space, to robotics. Our U.S. forces went into Afghanistan with a handful of drones, unmanned aerial systems, none of them armed. We now have more than 7,000 in our inventory. On the ground, we had 0 ground robotics. We now have more than 12,000. And it's not just the U.S., it's over 50 countries also are using military robotics. So these are big deal game changers. And what's fascinating, but also a little bit scary, is they're just the start. I'm working on a project called Next Tech, where we're trying to figure out what's the equivalent to the computer in 1980 or where the Predator drone was in 95. That is, it's real, it exists, but it's really not made its force felt upon the world. And the folks we've been interviewing that range from scientists to venture capitalists, they've been pointing out things like directed energy, lasers becoming truly real and used in battle, to robotics, but autonomous robotics, not the human controlling everything, but the robot starting to act out there on its own, to artificial intelligence. You know, we saw an AI compete and win in Jeopardy. Would it be so surprising to see it applied into war? Bioenhancements, both chemical but also technological bits put into our body, which take us beyond where our limitations were previously. That's exciting, that's scary. To things like 3D printing and new materials, where you can now manufacture in a way that's totally different than industrial processes that we've done in the past. We've seen gangs, for example, drug cartels 3D print out bumpers for their cars that were made of cocaine, so they weren't smuggling it in the in the normal parts of the car, but literally the parts of the car itself were the smuggling, to, for example, upgrading your weapons. The conversion kit for an legal AR-15 semi-automatic rifle to a M16 automatic rifle is just a little part that there's some worries about people stamping those out with 3D printing, and then suddenly you have gangs multiplying their firepower with this little untraceable part that they can make at home. When you ask about what the world is going to look like in 50 years, you really start to dance in the land of magic and science fiction. You know, our powers of prediction are really not all that good. I think, you know, our track record at it is not all that great, other than, frankly, the people in science fiction who tend to be the ones that get it right. I mean, just think of if you were sitting 50 years ago, we'd get everything wrong from our geopolitics. We'd be talking about, well, the US and the Soviets are still competing, to 50 years ago, concepts of things like how we would utilize computers we would get wrong, to my favorite example of this was experts at Disney, but also some of the top technology companies built the home of the future at one of the world's fairs. And this home of the future, you can go online and find the pictures of it. Some of it are really correct. For example, they predicted that kitchens in the future would have this strange thing called a microwave oven. That's, you know, wow, we got that right. But if you look at them, they also had a picture of a woman, and she was working at a futuristic steam iron, because back then, how could you conceive of things like, well, the woman's role in the home might be something other than housewife? So what are the social changes that are going to happen over the next 50 years that we have no handle on right now? Just like 50 years ago, they didn't have a handle on things like, you know, changes in gender, changes in race politics, you name it. What are those similar kind of changes that are going to happen? We don't know.